Okay, we are in public session. Great, thanks, Walt. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Joint Commission on Public Ethics. The meeting is now called to order.
May I interrupt?
Commissioner Levine?
Yes, thank you very much. I have a motion.
Well, let me get through this first, and then we can go to new and other business.
Well, let me ask a question, Commissioner Jerry. Have you been designated as chair by Governor Hochul?
Yes, I have.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, this meeting is now called to order. As with other JCOPE meetings, at this time we're using video conferencing technology. The public session of this meeting is accessible on JCOPE's website to watch via live streaming. A couple of important reminders. It is important that only one person speak at a time. In addition, when you speak, please identify yourself so we have a clear record. Also, please go on mute when not speaking. Mr. Levine, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Chair.
And prior to getting to the next order, I just want to welcome Judge C. Randall Henricks, who's been appointed as a new commissioner by Governor Hochul. Welcome, Judge.
Thank you very much. I look forward to serving with everyone. Thank you.
And the second item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes. It's behind your attachment A. Are there any corrections?
Mr. Chair, before we go on, I just want to say I've been informed by Commissioner Newton that she has a hard stop at 12:30. She will explain the reasons for that in executive session, but she asked the Commission's indulgence with respect to that, and that be taken into account as we proceed this morning.
Great, thank you. Any corrections with regard to the minutes?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Fisher.
All in favor?
Deering, Fisher, Weissman, DePiro, McNamara, McCarthy, Yates, Newton, Braun, Jacob, Cohen, and Levine. Opposed?
Great. Any opposed? Okay.
And abstain.
Any abstentions? Thanks, Martin. Oh,
Judge Henricks.
one abstention from Judge Henricks. Okay, it carries.
Thank you.
Now we move on to item 3, report from staff. Judge Berlin.
Thank you. The operations update for the Commission is behind tab B in your meeting materials. As you can see, it's been another busy period for staff. The figures are set forth in the operations report. You'll see also that cumulatively we are running at the customary level. Pandemic hasn't slowed us down at all. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. The meeting schedule for the coming year is behind attachment C. I haven't heard, I don't think we've heard back from anyone indicating any conflicts, but if there are any conflicts, please call those to my attention so we can address them promptly. Finally, with respect to the report from staff, at our August 26, 2021 meeting, there was a portion of the audio component of the beginning of our executive session, I think approximately 10 minutes, that ended up inadvertently going out over the air. The video had been stopped. We have examined the issue And as we have determined both internally and in dealing with OGS Media Services that there had been an error in disconnecting the audio cable from a box. During the pandemic, while we were entirely operating on WebEx and we had no public session, Media Services were handling the live stream entirely remotely. The August 26th meeting, I think, was the second meeting back in a public session, which required Media Services to come back into this facility and to have the need for the manual connection of the microphone system. We have implemented additional measures reinforcing the need to disconnect that, and we will also have additional monitoring of both components, that is the audio and the video live stream, during executive session to ensure that there is not a recurrence of that kind of thing. I will say, I personally, during a meeting, am monitoring the video. I have the audio off because there's a lag between the public live stream and our own proceedings. And I was able to confirm that the video was off. In future, we will be monitoring both components of the stream. In as much as we have determined that that broadcast, as unfortunate as it was completely unintentional and the result of a failure to fully follow the technical protocol. It was entirely on the protocol side. The technical protocol side, we've concluded that this is not the kind of unintentional disclosure or disclosure of information that would require a referral to the Inspector General under Executive Law Section 94-9-C. But I or staff are happy to answer any questions if any commissioner has any questions about this, about our procedures or about the outcome of that incident. Hi, thank you.
No questions? We'll now move on to new and other business. Does anyone have an item for that?
We have a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Levine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the advisory opinion of the Deputy General Counsel approving Governor Cuomo's book publishing arrangement for American Crisis be revoked on the grounds that a fundamental misrepresentation, a material misrepresentation, was made to obtain the opinion. I further move that the governor be given 20 days to apply for reinstatement of the opinion. If he has other material that he wishes to present to the commission.
I think that motion is out of order. There's an item related to that on the executive session. So I think there would have to be a motion to amend the agenda to entertain your motion, Commissioner.
Well, you've made a ruling. I appeal the ruling of the chair.
Well, I have not made a ruling. The chair doesn't make a ruling. I'm just stating the facts.
Are you ruling that my motion is out of order in public session?
I believe your motion is out of order.
I appeal the ruling of the chair.
Does anyone want to make a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second? Commissioner Jacobs, second. Discussion? Yes, Commissioner Fisher.
I believe it's a matter of public record that there is a matter of an outside activity request that is now pending before this commission. And I believe that the legal advice we've been given is that any matter that is pending before this commission is not to be discussed publicly while the matter is pending. So, given that the intention, as I understand it, of amending the agenda is to discuss a matter that should not be discussed in public, I will be opposed.
Judge Braun, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I agree with you, Commissioner Fisher. Generally, matters that come up before the commission should not be discussed publicly unless they're a matter of public record. I have another concern here, which is the process of how.
Can you please speak up, Judge?
Sure, I'll move closer. I'll repeat what I said. I agree with Commissioner Fisher that generally matters for the commission should not be discussed at a public session unless they're not confidential or they're already out in the public. And under those circumstances, certain discussion can take place. But I'm also disturbed as to the past process of how this was approved, and it was not done in what I think should be the normal process. I'm not going to speak further to that at this time. I'm going to defer to anybody else who wishes to speak.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Levine.
may I begin by saying the matter at hand is fully in the public domain. Governor Cuomo waived all confidentiality when he announced that the commission had approved the book publishing arrangements. The letter containing the material misrepresentations that was sent on his behalf by Judith Mogul is in the public domain. The advisory opinion by Deputy General Counsel Levine is in the public domain. There is no legal or other principled reason why the motion to revoke an opinion should not be conducted in a public session. With respect to what I gather is Commissioner Fisher's allusion, matters that are within subsection 17 are investigatory. The burden of proof is on the commission. When an applicant attempts to elicit an opinion under subsection 16, the burden of proof is on the applicant. And the burden was not met by Governor Cuomo and his counsel, Judith Mogul. Material misrepresentation was made. That's an immutable fact. State resources were used in the writing, the editing, and the advancing of the book. The fact that the assertion has been made by Mr. Azzopardi and others that volunteers were deployed should have been communicated to Deputy General Counsel Levine. It wasn't. So in either respect, material misrepresentations were made. The opinion should be revoked and in public.
So the issue now, and I think there are a whole bunch of issues with that in terms of putting the cart before the horse from a fact-finding perspective and so forth. But the motion right now is whether or not the agenda should be modified.
Commissioner Cohen has his hand.
Commissioner Cohen?
Thank you. And I first want to say that I think it is absolutely, unequivocally, the purview of this commission to investigate and determine whether the particulars of an outside activity request that the commission has granted have been adhered to by a state employee, whether it's the governor or anybody else. So I also think it is squarely within the commission's purview, and the commission can and should investigate any matters where there's where it may be that the individual who's seeking approval of an outside activity or any other opinion from the commission has made material misrepresentations. That goes without saying, whether it's the governor or anybody else. An individual does not and simply cannot waive confidentiality when he or she says to the world, I as a state employee, can perform this outside activity because I received permission from the Joint Commission on Public Ethics. That would make everybody who receives a grant a permission to, it just proves too much, the argument proves too much. Every individual who then receives permission from the Joint Commission on Public Ethics to conduct an outside activity and then goes forth and conducts that outside activity is thereby waived, under Commissioner Levine's rationale, waives confidentiality. That's just simply not the case. It's a specious argument, and it fails, it collapses on its own weight. So there has been no confidentiality waived. This matter can and should be properly discussed and pursued with all due vigor in the executive session, as it's mandated, as the commission is mandated to do so by the legislature, who in the legislature and the governor, who passed and enacted the confidentiality provisions of the public officers law that governs this commission. So there's no objection on my part to the commission pursuing this line of inquiry here. It just needs to do so in the executive session. That's our mandate, that's our obligation, and that's what we should do. So I would vote against amending the meeting agenda and to discuss this matter properly in the executive session.
Thank you. General Counsel Stamp, do you have any additional comments?
Actually, no, I think Commissioner Cohen covered it. 9416 is the governing provision which says that advice and guidance is confidential. The Commission has the ability to post the guidance in a redacted form, but that's the extent of it. That I agree there has been no waiver, and that has not traditionally been the position of the Commission. And this should be done in the executive session, any further discussion relating to confidential information, including whether or not there were any material misrepresentations.
Any other comments? Yes, Judge Yates.
Just with regard to the last thing that Monica said, if you read 16, it says the request is confidential and the commission can publish the opinion. So you said any information, I think you read 16 a little more broadly than the actual literal words of the statute. The statute says the request is confidential, but the opinion isn't. And I don't know anything about whether or not a decision to revoke an opinion is confidential either. It's not an investigation under 13. So that's my question back to you. Are you correctly reading the statute?
The request and any representations made in that request would be covered by 9416. And 9416 only allows the Commission to publish an opinion in a redacted form. I agree there's nothing in the statute that clarifies what the process is for revocation, and that is a subject matter the Commission should discuss. There should be a process for revocation if that's what the Commission wants to do. There should be standards for what the Commission would consider and whether it's going to revoke an advisory opinion. Other agencies have done this by issuing regulations. I don't think necessarily regulations are required, but that's something the Commission has to discuss. But I certainly don't think that 9416 contemplates that would be done publicly when everything related to guidance is to be done confidentially. And to the extent the commission is investigating factual misrepresentations, that clearly should be done confidentially under other provisions of statute.
Well, my question to the maker of the motion, Gary, is are you asking to make public anything that was in the request?
Actually,
or is your motion directed just at the opinion?
actually, George made the motion.
Okay, George, if you want to answer that, or Gary, I mean, do either of you want to discuss what was in the request, or are you just asking to either revoke or leave alone the opinion? Curious.
Well, I'll defer.
And actually, the motion related to amending the agenda.
Yeah, which is Gary.
Yeah, but we've gotten off that. So, my apologies. Someone had their hand up? Commissioner Newton? Oh, Judge
Yes,
Newton.
I was just going to comment, Mr. Chair, that we've gotten far afield from the motion and the second to the motion, and we've gotten into discussions that we haven't decided yet if we're going to address them or not, because we haven't addressed the motion.
I agree.
So I would urge you to call for the vote
Great.
on whether or not there will be a change in the agenda, and let's move forward. Thank you very much.
I agree. Thank you, Judge. I'll call the motion. All in favor?
Hold on, you can't raise your hand.
What are we voting?
This is a motion to change
amend
the agenda.
Change the agenda. Don't vote.
Weissman, DePiero, McNamara, Levine, Yates, McCarthy, Braun. That's 7.
All against?
Deering, Fisher, Newton, Hinrichs, Cohen.
Any abstentions?
What's the vote, Martin?
I don't believe I got, Commissioner Jacob, I didn't get your,
I voted for changing the agenda.
That's 8.
yeah, that is 8-5, the motion carries.
Okay. Motion carries, so we're back to Commissioner Levine's.
You catch Commissioner DePiero's vote?
She voted in favor.
I didn't see her vote.
You voted in favor.
Commissioner, did I correctly record your vote in favor?
Oh, Commissioner DePiero, can you hear us? Commissioner DePiero. Did you vote? If you voted to amend the agenda by bringing the matter from executive session to public session, please do a thumbs up. If you voted to not do that, please do a thumbs down. Thumbs up, okay?
Okay, motion carries.
Motion carries. So, Commissioner Levine, we're back to your original motion. Can you please restate it?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I moved that the opinion of the Deputy General Counsel approving the arrangement of former Governor Cuomo to publish American Crisis be revoked on the ground that in eliciting the opinion, the Governor and his representative, Judith Mogul, made one or more material misrepresentations. Further, that the former Governor be given 20 days to apply to have the opinion reinstated upon demonstration that no misrepresentations were made.
Is there a second?
Didn't we do that?
Commissioner Weissman? Discussion? Commissioner Fisher?
I have a question, which is there an investigation that is needed here in order to determine whether it's true or false that the allegations that Commissioner Levine made about Ms. Mogul's representations, do we need to investigate whether those allegations are true or not, or are we allowed to vote on something before we investigate it?
General Counsel Stam, can you answer that?
I'm right now unclear what the process is that the commission is undertaking in order to determine what the facts are for finding that misrepresentation took place. And I'm in an awkward position because many commissioners may understand there are related matters to these findings, and the commission is possibly jeopardizing that by what it's doing now. But I can't really discuss this in the public session any further.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, I want to clarify an earlier point where I made some error with the subsection numbers. They have it correctly. Section 13 deals with investigations. 16 deals with opinions. 17 deals with the rules with respect to outside activities. With regard to 17, we promulgated a rule which required a deliberation and full vote by the commissioner. That rule was obviated by a determination by staff that an informal opinion is tantamount to approval of outside activities.
Well, Commissioner Levine, if I could interrupt you one second and ask people who aren't speaking to please go on mute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Section 16 has within its ambit the rendering of opinions. My motion is within the ambit of 16. It is not an investigation. It does not require an investigation. The fact is immutable. By Governor Cuomo's own acknowledgement, state personnel were involved in writing, editing, and advancing the publishing enterprise.
We've had hands up for Judge.
General Counsel Stam, I see your hand has been up.
Judge Newman, Judge Brown.
Okay.
Kelly,
Okay.
thank you.
I'm sorry, I think that Commissioner Levine clarified something that I had a question about. So Commissioner, if someone else can go ahead.
Okay.
But can people please mute, because I'm having a hard time hearing.
And I see some other hands up. If people could please mute, that'd be great. Judge Newton?
Well, two questions are raised from me, and one was alluded to by our counsel. What does it mean to revoke? Do we have the authority to revoke? What are the factors entailed in that conduct of revocation and revoking? Where is that written? And the underpinning of my question goes strictly to an issue of due process. With all due respect to my colleague, this motion for me is riddled with an assault on due process, and it is a very troubling issue that an ethics commission would not carefully and thoughtfully review what it wants to do and follow guidelines accordingly. And as I understand our counsel, currently there are no guidelines in our own regulations or in our own sphere, nor have we voted to adopt guidelines on revocation from other entities. My second question regards the statement of facts. You know, sometimes, and that's where due process goes in when we're going to take action. I have great respect for my friend and colleague, the Attorney General. I think her report was excellent, but we have not heard those witnesses. We have not seen their testimony. And as such, I dispute the issue that these are, because they're in the public domain, that they are facts. And we are not the finders of fact in this instance. It's my understanding when we do something, we need to have facts determined at a hearing, a tribunal of some sort. So while the end may justify the need, the end might justify the procedure, and we may all have very strong feelings, I know I do, about whether or not this book deal was appropriate. I question whether the steps that we're taking via that motion that's on the floor is appropriate, or whether other steps need to be taken to ensure that we are working within our guidelines, our jurisdictional guidelines, to revoke something, and that we act based on not what we read in the paper, but after a finding of fact at a tribunal that we support it. Thank you, Commissioner, and congratulations, Commissioner Daring, on your new position as chair.
Thank you, Judge.
And my dear friend, Randy Kondrick, it's always good to see you, my friend. Thank you.
And Judge Braun?
I was not on the commission at the time this occurred.
Oh, and if you could please speak up a little, Judge.
Okay, I have not alleged respiratory damage, and I think the medication gets on my vocal cords and makes me hoarse. I move closer. I was not on the commission at the time that the contract for the book by former Governor Cuomo was approved, and therefore I wanted to have answered the following question by somebody or somebody's who were before I get to that. So Executive Law Section 94 sub 16 does give the Commission the power to revoke an opinion that's been issued. Now here, my understanding is that the Commission did not previously vote to approve or in any way on this opinion, but this was issued by a member of the staff at the direction of the former chair of the Commission. And I understand this has all come out publicly. But I just want to confirm my understanding from everything I've heard. The Commission did not vote to approve this opinion authorizing the book deal with certain restrictions that had to be adhered to, and that the opinion was merely issued by staff at the direction of the former chair. So I'm going to leave that for somebody to answer.
General Counsel Stam, can you please answer that?
Sure. I just want to clarify, and this has been debated by the Commission for several months now, but at the time that this was discussed, and again, I'm in a uncomfortable position because under 9416, all of these facts are, in my view, are confidential, and the process by which we dealt with any specific advisory opinion and any representations that were made are covered by 9416 or confidential. But that being said, until the Commission changed the delegation of authority earlier this year, it had been the operation of this agency for the last decade that staff approved outside activities of state officers and employees under the outside activity regulations and issued informal letter guidance to all those who sought outside activity approval. That has been the process for the last decade, and it was consistent with the delegation of authority to staff from the date of the first appointment of the executive director, and it preceded this commission. That is the way it operated before Jacob was in place. Earlier this year, the Commission changed that delegation to for statewide elected officials. It's now explicit and clear that the Commission and not the staff approve informal letter opinions consistent with the various regulations that require approval. So that is now clear. But at the time, staff approved it consistent with its operations for the last decade. And there's nothing in the regulations themselves that say a vote of the Commission is required. It says Commission approval is required for all outside activities of all state officers and employees. And Commission is defined as the agency as JCOPE. not commissioners. And so there is some confusion and dispute over what the process should have been, but there was nothing unusual about processes that were followed for the last 10 years. And so I just want that to be clear, so everyone understands that, including new commissioners.
I'd like to speak.
Yes, Judge Yates.
In response, please, to that.
Oh.
I just want to add that what I brought up is not meant to be critical in any way of anybody on staff. And the staff member who was involved in approval, I think, did a very comprehensive job in how you approved it. I want to make that clear for the record.
Thank you, Judge Braun. Judge Yates?
Once again, I have to disagree with the quote legal unquote advice we're getting from counsel. You couldn't be more wrong, Monica. We went through this. I'm not going to go through all the debates we went through for the last 6 months. The law and the regulation delegation resolution never authorized, ever since the change in the statute and ever since the change in the resolution, never authorized the outside activity approval of a state official, which was required by the commission. I tried to clarify that in the commission in a resolution that we put to a vote back in August or September, and it failed by a tie vote. So in order to, and then I kept re-raising it, I kept saying, you are breaking the law, you are breaking the law, you're not following resolutions, you're not following the law. When staff approves a state official, a statewide official's outside activity request, you're breaking the law. And finally, in order to break through that, Bill Fisher and I came to a compromise. And the compromise was we had a new resolution that said, going forward, we're going to follow the law. In the past, we're not going to reopen the old one unless there was a misrepresentation so that the approval was improperly received. And that's what we did. But for you to sit there just because we sat and said, we're going to start following the law now and not reopen 10 years worth of approvals that broke the law, doesn't mean that you were always following the law. It was never proper under the resolutions, it was never proper under the law for staff to approve a statewide official's outside income request. But as a matter of compromise, back in January, a few months ago, we went ahead and agreed that going forward, we'd follow the law and we weren't going to reopen open. And that's what we did. So Monica, I can't disagree with you more when you say that was it's true it was the practice. It is true it was the practice. But if you look at the resolutions, there was a resolution before the law was amended in 2011 and a resolution after the law was amended in 2011. The resolution before the law in 2011 said that the staff could approve just about anything. Then the law was changed, and the law was changed to say, no, an approval requires a vote of the commission, that any action of the commission requires a majority vote of the commission. And right after that, the commission amended its regulations to designate, to specify what was authorized for staff and what wasn't. And an outside activity request by the governor or any other statewide official was not in that delegation. So Monica, we can argue about this. We've spent months arguing about this. You can continue to argue it. I don't want to keep arguing, but I can't let the argument rest with your false assertion that this was always used.
General Counsel Stam?
Obviously, I disagree with Commissioner Yates with all due respect. That being said, I agree there's no point in continuing to belabor the issue, but what I want to be absolutely clear about is that staff followed the exact same process that they've been following for years and that the commission is fully aware of. And we can continue to debate until we're both blue in the face about whether or not their vote was required, but it is without a doubt that commission followed the exact same procedure it has been following for the last decade. And that, I think, there's no dispute about. And so if we can leave it there, we can agree to disagree.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner McNamara.
First, I apologize for the jackhammer going outside my office. If that interferes in any way with your ability to hear me. Just preliminarily, I'd like to say that I think it's great that we're having this conversation in the public session. It gives the public great insight into the quality of the dialogue among the commissioners and some of the struggles, some of the issues we deal with on a regular basis. So I appreciate the opportunity to deliberate on this issue in the public session, despite all the challenges it might present with respect to Monica's ability to counsel us on some of the more nuanced legal issues that are implicated by some of these issues. In my mind, this is merely an issue of reconsideration of a topic that was addressed by staff. Under circumstances where, as events have unfolded, it appears that staff did not have an accurate portrayal of the grounds upon which approval was being solicited. And in my view, it's just appropriate for this commission to take a fresh look at the question of approving this outside activity on the basis of what we now know. And there are things that we now know as a certainty that appear to contradict statements that were made in the application for approval. Things upon which I feel do not require further due process or investigation. And I would refer the Commission to items 2, 3, and 7 of the 9 enumerated conditions upon which approval was solicited. They are clearly not accurate, as we have learned now through media reports and statements of the governor himself. So in my view, it doesn't matter to me if we revoke the approval now or if we leave the approval in place pending reconsideration upon the submission of clarity from the governor or the people who aided him in submitting this request for approval for our consideration in essentially a redo of staff's approval. But to me, this is something that should be addressed in the public. There's no reason to keep it private, and there's no reason why we have to defer to some secretive investigation before we reach the ultimate issue as to whether this approval should be revisited in a reconsideration process.
Judge, thank you. Judge Heinrichs, did you have your hand up?
Can you give that to Jim, please?
I did not, but, you know, listening to everyone, I'm struck that it seems clear that the issue has to be looked at again. The concept that were, as I understood the motion, it included the fact that there were material misrepresentations made in the process. It appears to me that that would be a fact-finding of some kind, or further deliberations or presentations would have to be made to reach that conclusion. It would also seem equally clear that a body such as this would have the inherent power and obligation to revoke a decision if it was in fact based on material misrepresentations. I think it seems clear that you'd have to do that, but from where I sit, and I know I haven't been part of the other meetings, to reach the conclusion today, right now, that there were in fact material misrepresentations, from what I heard, would seem to be premature.
Thank you, Judge. Any other comments? I think before we vote, I just want... Oh, yes, George.
Thank you. Can I take my mask down
What's that?
to speak? I think one of the material misrepresentations that Commissioner Levine raised, and it doesn't go to whether or not people actually were what they did as volunteering, it's the fact that the opinion did not clearly state that state employees were going to volunteer. That fact is in the public. That fact was stated I believe, by the press secretary, Azar Party, I have trouble with his name, on a number of occasions. There's another issue here that's in the public sector, and I want to quickly read opinion 9816, which held an employee is paid by the state for carrying out his or her public duties. Where authoring materials is within those duties, the employee should not receive additional compensation. In addition, if an employee were to receive payment from a private source for engaging in his or her state job, the public could reasonably question whether the employee is acting in the public interest or in the interest of the individual or entity offering the additional compensation. Now, the Attorney General, in a report, indicated a while ago that nursing home deaths was severely understated. But going to this book, American Crisis by the former governor, I'm just going to go to page 1 in the introduction, because it sums up what this book is about. I normally don't turn off my cell phone when I sleep because the work of being governor is literally 24 hours a day. Further down the page, he speaks about receiving a call from his then secretary to the governor, and the secretary to the governor and the governor got the health commissioner on. That is what this book is about. It is about what the governor did and his job from day one of this pandemic. And that's exactly what 9816 addressed. That if the taxpayers of the state of New York pay you for doing your job, you cannot get paid again, at least while you're still in the public sector in that job. And to me, that is the second reason, along with Commissioner Levine's, as to why the revocation is appropriate here.
Judge?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to add one thing before the discussion concludes, and it's a caution. It's somewhat was alluded to by Judge Newton in her comments and by Judge Henricks. And it's this: if you look at the statute, if you look at subsection 17A, it's entirely clear that we're dealing with an alleged departure from an obligation created by rules that we've promulgated. At the end of the day, the ability of the commission to prosecute a claim, to impose sanctions, is dependent upon ultimately being able to determine that there's been a departure from the requirements of the underlying statute, of the Public Officers Law. And what we're debating here is ultimately not an ancillary issue, but an ingredient in any underlying claim. And I have to be careful in what I say here, because I don't want to trench upon matter that I think we all agree has to be maintained confidentially. But I have grave concerns, and I believe others share them, that we risk in getting ahead of ourselves and in purporting to make a factual determination on an ingredient of what is part of ultimately a claim this commission may wish to prosecute to conclusion. We are prejudicing our ability to accomplish that. And I think everyone has to give a good deal of hard and careful thought to what the implications of this are. I understand the urge to have a public discussion about certain kinds of things that are of concern to the commission and to individual commissioners and to the public as well. Those are important considerations, and the statute provides for revealing those at the conclusion of a proceeding. Subsections 13 and 14 are very clear about that. But the important part is getting to a successful conclusion and not compromising that out of overzealousness or overeagerness to get on top of allegations. As has been said, there are factual contentions that need to be investigated fully and to be addressed in a way that not only comports with due process, but that follows our regulations and the requirements of the statute. I don't think I can say much more without going beyond what's permissible, but I do think it's important that commissioners have that in mind, because our ultimate mission is to make sure that the requirements of the Public Officers Law, are complied with. Our regulations are intended to help us implement that, but at the end of the day, and 17A, subsection 17A of section 94 is clear. We have to be able to take the steps necessary and summon the proof that's necessary and engage in the proceedings that are necessary to successfully bring a claim of departure from the public officers law, particularly section 74, to a successful conclusion. So I ask that the commissioners take that into account. Thank you.
Any other comments? Before calling the vote, I just want to say my piece on it. I agree with comments made by Judge Berlin, by Judge Newton, and Judge Heinrichs. And, I think we have a process. I think we have to operate pursuant to statutes. And I think that process has to be followed. And I don't, I think I'm in favor of transparency. I'm concerned about, having this discussion in public. I think it belongs in executive session. And for all of these reasons, when we vote, I'm going to vote against the motion. I wanted to explain my vote beforehand. Let's see. So all in favor of the motion, please raise your hands.
Weissman, McNamara, Levine, Yates, Jacob, Braun. That's 6.
All opposed?
Deering, Fisher, Heinrichs, Cohen, Newton, DePiro, 6.
Any abstentions? No.
I don't believe I got Judge McCarthy.
Judge McCarthy?
I may have missed your camera.
Judge, are you in favor of the motion or against the motion? If you're in favor of the motion? Okay.
7-6, motion fails.
Okay, 7-6, motion fails. If I could just make a comment too, or a reminder, I know we have important things to handle on the executive session agenda, and we have Judge Newton, who has to leave by, I think, 12:30?
Yes.
And I know that Commissioner Cohen has a hard stop of 2, so I just want to remind commissioners of that. Is there any other new and other business?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Levine.
I have some questions for staff, if you would indulge me.
Okay.
Despite the time constraint. The commission voted to make 2 criminal referrals, and the letter was sent to the Attorney General by Judge Berlin. I'd like to know why that letter was not circulated to the commissioners in advance before it was sent.
Who's the best to answer that?
I'll do my best to answer that, Commissioner. Ordinarily, it's my understanding procedurally, we would not typically, in making those kinds of referrals, circulate to the commission. The commission had spoken at its meeting. We have the resolution. We have the statute. And the next step was to make the referral.
But didn't you and I have a
so.
conversation, that disabuse me if I have this wrong, Judge, didn't you and I have a conversation when you said it was your intention to circulate the draft? Or do I have that wrong?
You'll have to refresh my recollection.
Well, I won't take up the time now.
Commissioner, if I said that and I didn't do it, then I apologize to you. But as I'm sitting here now, and I'm not, I simply don't have. You and I have lots of conversations, lots and lots of conversations. And as you know, I freely converse with you. I take your calls, and I invite you to call me whenever you think it's appropriate to do so. I don't have that specific, and I apologize for it. But My goal was to get that letter out sooner rather than later because the commission had directed that it be sent, and so it was sent.
Now, as I understand it, Mr. Chairman, if I may continue with Judge Berlin.
Okay.
As I understand it, Judge Berlin, the Attorney General's position is that the special voting rules are applicable to these two referrals. Do I understand that correctly?
I think the Attorney General's letter speaks for itself, but that's my interpretation, and I think I communicated that interpretation to you and the other commissioners.
Was there any consultation had by the Office of Attorney General with our staff prior to you receiving a letter from the Attorney General last night?
There were, as I said, they confirmed receipt of the letter, and they indicated they would follow up with us after they'd had an opportunity to review it, and that was communicated by me to the commission.
You are approaching the maximum length for a recording. Finish your recording after the tone.
Well, somebody's going to have a very lengthy voicemail.
Again, on the follow-up, Mr. Chairman. Judge Berlin, was there any specific discussion had by members of our staff with the Office of Attorney General?
To send this message, press pound or hang up. To play it, 3. To re-record
I had no that I can think of.
To discard it, 6.
Someone is in voicemail.
While it's looking into it, maybe we
To
should
send this message,
take a
press
second.
pound or hang up. To play it, 3. To re-record it, 4. To add to it, 5. To discard it, 6. Your message has been sent. If you would like to try an extension, you may do so now. Goodbye.
Mr. Chairman, has the technical problem been resolved?
It appears so.
Thank you very much. All right, I'll repeat the question to Judge Berlin. Prior to the promulgation of the letter by the Attorney General, was there any specific discussion by our staff of the Office of Attorney General regarding the applicability of the special voting rule protocol?
I had no such conversations. There would have been communication with the Attorney General's office to determine where in the Attorney General's office or to whom in the Attorney General's office such a referral letter should be directed.
What is your opinion as to whether the special voting rules are applicable?
I think it's a complicated question. I would prefer to have, which involves an interpretation of our statute and how it impacts a referral under Section 63, sub 3 of the executive law. That is a discussion, unless the commissioners direct otherwise, that I think we should be having in executive session because it does involve the rendition of legal advice, and I think it would be consistent with our meeting protocols to do that. And I'm happy to address that in executive session.
So far as you know, has an opinion been rendered previously by our staff on this subject to the Commission? Which is to say specifically the applicability of the special voting protocol to the criminal referrals to the Attorney General?
It's set out in, I believe it's subsection 14 of Section 94 of the executive law. I believe it specifies that a criminal referral with respect to statutes other than sections 73, 73-A, and 74 of the Public Officers Law are subject to and shall be conducted in the same manner as votes taken under subsection 14 of executive law, of the executive law, section 94. So I read that language as incorporating special voting requirements. As that applies here, I really think that's something that we should talk about in executive session and not in public session, because it does involve the rendition of legal advice.
Well, you can say in the public session, can you not, that there are now sufficient appointees by the governor to take a revote? Is that the case?
Yes,
Right
yes, that is absolutely the case.
Well, then, when Judge Braun is finished, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion.
Judge Braun?
I actually was concerned about this issue and was going to bring it up in the executive session. But I was concerned and disturbed about what the vote was last time. And I won't speak any further to it because I think the rest of the executive session laid at that.
General Counsel Stam?
So, I'm sorry, but just Commissioner Braun, the vote took place in the public session at the last meeting.
Did it? I didn't recall that. So
if you recall, there was debate about it. It wasn't on the public session agenda, and there was discussion about whether it should be in the public or the executive session discussion, and it happened in the public session, so the vote is recorded publicly.
all right, thank you.
Are you ready for my motion, Mr. Chair?
I am.
Thank you very much. I move that the executive director be instructed to refer to the Attorney General for criminal investigation the breach of confidentiality that occurred at the meeting of January 2019 and all other breaches of confidentiality that occurred prior to the meeting of January 2019.
Is there a second?
May I ask a point of information?
Sure.
Is that consistent with the prior resolution? I believe the term alleged was used, and it was two
Yes,
different.
Thank you. I correct that.
And it was two different requests involved in that original motion.
Yes, and I'll make a second motion, Commissioner Weissman, with regard to the Inspector General after the first one is disposed of.
Just to clarify, the motion that was passed at the August meeting also made no reference to any prior incidents. It was only related to the meeting of January 2019.
Okay.
Not to say it can't be introduced now, just to clarify.
Thank you very much. I made the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Somebody else second it, please.
Okay, Commissioner Weissman, he seconded it. Discussion. Commissioner Fisher?
I believe it's a probably unlawful thing that we're doing right here to discuss an investigation alleging unlawful conduct by, I take it, the Inspector General. I don't think that's a proper way to start an investigation. I think we have always authorized investigations or sent them off to a U.S. attorney or an attorney general after discussing it in a private session. And the precedent of putting forward what amounts to an accusation like this in public is wrong and probably unethical and unlawful. And for that reason, I'm going to vote against
it. Judge Braun.
Commissioner Levine, that's not your motion, as you said, that was the second motion. Commissioner Fisher, this motion relates to the leak. I wasn't on the commission at this time, but it's certainly come out in various public places. I have no need to discuss this any further than maybe some other commissioners do. And I voted for it last time, and I'm going to vote for this motion again. By the way, alleged.
What is the motion?
I was actually one of the who suggested adding alleged last time. But there was other discussion about other leaks which Commissioner Levine withdrew from this motion. That was discussed last time? No.
Thank you. Judge Newton. Well, I think your microphone might be off.
I'm trying. I don't have a mouse, and so I'm having a hard time getting to the unmute.
Okay.
So please forgive me. I don't understand the motion, and I don't know what it is right now, so I just would need some clarification. Is your motion, Commissioner Levine, that we refer to the Attorney General the alleged leak that occurred at a specific dated meeting and all other possible leaks from all time? That I find overly broad. That is in addition to your the motion which we passed in August, and I see clarification. And if my understanding is right, I would urge a friendly amendment to be more specific of the leak that we want to refer to Madam Attorney General.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. I so amend the motion to confine it to the breach of confidentiality occurring in January 2019.
And any other comments?
Could I have someone read the motion from beginning to end so we know what we're voting on?
Sure. Mark, can you do that? Or?
I have shorthand, so Commissioner Levine, please correct me if I misstate anything, and we'll get it sorted out. But to move the executive director to, move that the commission direct the executive director to refer to the Office of Attorney General the alleged, which I believe was accepted on a friendly amendment, alleged leak at the January 2019 commission meeting under Executive Law 63.3. The original motion included and prior leaks, but that was subsequently dropped by Commissioner Levine. Have I accurately stated your motion?
You have. Thank you very much.
Any other comments on this? I'm just going to, before I call the vote, I'm just going to explain my vote. The last time I abstained on this because, I think we're a commission that exists by laws. I think we have to follow those laws. We have to follow appropriate process. And I have nothing against the motion, but I think it belongs in executive session, and I think that's the appropriate place for it. And I think it's fraught with legal issues doing it in public, so I'm going to abstain again. But so having said that, all in favor, please raise your hand.
Weissman, Fisher, McNamara, Levine, McCarthy, Yates, Newton, Jacob, Hendricks, Braun, Cohen. That's 11.
All against? Anybody? And any
I see DePiro.
against? Against. Is she against?
Yeah,
Okay.
Commissioner DePiro.
And any abstentions? I'll abstain.
That's 11, 1, and 1. Motion carries.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, I propose a revote of the same motion that I made at the last meeting with regard to alleged impropriety in the inquiry by the inspector general.
Okay. Commissioner Levine, can you please repeat it?
Yes.
And if I could cut you off for 1 second, if everyone could please go on mute, it's a little hard to hear Commissioner Levine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the executive director be instructed to refer to the Attorney General for a criminal investigation, alleged impropriety in the investigation of the alleged breach of confidentiality of the meeting of January 2019 as occurred within the office of the State Inspector General.
Is there a second?
Somebody else, please.
Commissioner Jacob seconded it. Discussion. Commissioner Fisher.
We should not be voting on this matter in public session. It establishes a terrible precedent, and I'm going to vote against it in the open session. In a executive session, I may have voted otherwise.
Any other comments? Okay. Let's see. Commissioner Cohen.
Yeah, I just want to echo Commissioner Fisher's views. I think it's wholly inappropriate to be doing this here in the public session. I think it's unprecedented. It sets a very bad precedent, and it's just wholly unwarranted.
Judge Braun.
Well, for all of us sakes, but particularly a new commissioner, really important commissioner, I think this should be taken up in executive session. I think we all should hear more information as to why there should be a request for a criminal investigation. Therefore, I'm going to move that this motion be moved in executive session for further discussion there.
Well, yeah,
I would second that and greatly appreciate it.
Commissioner Levine, are you willing to withdraw your motion to entertain the motion that was just made?
Condition, Mr. Chair, we have your assurance that the vote on the motion will be made public in the public session subsequent to the executive session. Otherwise, I won't withdraw it.
Commissioners,
I will not allow the vote to be taken in the Star Chamber.
General Counsel Stam, can you respond to that?
If the commission is doing this in executive session pursuant to 93 and 94, the executive law, it is a confidential matter by law, not a decision or discretionary decision of the commission, and so it cannot be, the vote cannot be released in the public session. It would be the same as any other investigatory matter that the commission takes up.
So
there's no difference here.
Okay, so I think from a process, Judge Braun?
Well, I think that with, as my suggestion is Commissioner Levine, since it's your motion, it would be your motion, the merits of this now, and we could then vote as to what you wish, rather than looking for the chair to make an assurance. We, the commission, can vote to release the vote in the public session subsequently. And we have, this is not an investigatory matter. This is asking the Attorney General to investigate, which is making a referral. There's no investigation that's going to take place within the commission. We've already done our investigation to some limited degree as to what happened with the leak, and this relates to that. So my suggestion would be, Commissioner Levine, that you go along with the motion, and then if you want, make a subsequent motion as to the release of the vote taking place in the release of what the votes are.
Levine, if you have a response.
He's on mute. He's on mute. I'm going to mute.
Okay. Commissioner Levine, do you have a response? We think you're on mute. Commissioner Levine, can you hear us?
Just trying to figure it out. Let me just say that under section 94, so
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Do you have a response to?
There was a technical difficulty at my end, and I apologize to the commission for the delay. I will now, per Judge, what I believe is Judge Braun's suggestion, Mr. Chairman, I will withdraw my original motion, and I will make a new motion, if I may.
Sure.
I move that the matter of a referral regarding the Inspector General in response to the letter we have received last night from the Attorney General be conducted in the executive session with the proviso that whatever vote is taken will be divulged to the public. And I will say on the motion, I do not agree with the interpretation of Madam General Counsel.
Okay. And I think we've got just a comment again that we're going to be losing people soon, and we have votes to make in executive session. Is there a second on that motion? Judge Braun, you're seconding the motion? Is there discussion? Yes, Commissioner Fisher.
So if I understand this correctly, what we just did was authorize a referral when someone within this room allegedly disclosed the result of a vote to the governor's office. And now we're about to vote to do the same thing ourselves. It's not a crime suddenly when we decide to release it as the result of a vote, but it is an alleged crime when someone leaks it to the governor's office. That makes no sense to me. I'm going to vote against this.
Judge Braun?
To any person or entity outside the commission related to matters before the commission may occur only as authorized by the commission. Bill, that gives us the authority to make, to allow this to occur by vote of the commission. It did not occur if there was such an alleged leak, which has been discussed in many different realms. Apparently that was done without any approval of the commission.
Any other comments? Let's see.
If I may, if I can ask Monica, if you could refresh my recollection as to whether Judge Braun's interpretation of that provision of the Public Officers Law is consistent with the past practices of the Commission.
That this is a subject that is being debated by the commissioners right now. That is not consistent with the interpretation that the commission's been operating under for the last several years, but commissioners are now discussing that interpretation. So the interpretation we've been operating in is the commission can authorize confidential communications, and those communications are, not the same as publicly disclosing information or action of the commission, but could authorize confidential communications so that staff can make disclosures necessary in order to effectuate investigations and other matters, and so it can talk to prosecutors and witnesses and subjects and disclose what is needed to be discussed. But this is a complicated subject that I think various commissioners want to be heard on, and so I won't say more in this setting because I know that it's 12 o'clock and we have important business to get to, and we're losing commissioners at 12:30.
So I would just say that I would vote against this motion then because it essentially provides an end run around this issue that Monica just elucidated as to how the commission wants to interpret this particular confidentiality provision of the Public Officers Law. Gary's motion decides that. And there would be no need to have a discussion because the commission would be de facto adopting an interpretation, a new interpretation that it has not operated under for several years. So for that reason, I vote against it and would instead prefer, and I think the right thing to do, is to have a robust discussion on how the commission wants to interpret this applicable provision of the public officers law.
Yes, Judge Henricks. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Commissioner Jacob. And I think you're on mute, Commissioner.
In an email I sent to all commissioners and council and deputy council, I covered the questions that are now being raised, and a response to that was made by staff. Now, time is running out in the public session. I had wanted to have that discussion in detail in the public session because it really involves what you now hear, a statutory interpretation. What does Section 94.9 mean? But given the time constraints and the need to get into the executive session, I will vote for this motion because I strongly believe that to date we have been interpreting that provision incorrectly. And I will lay out my reasons orally, although I have laid them out in an extensive email. So I will vote for it for the reason I have stated. Thank you.
Unless there's an objection, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand.
Weissman, McNamara, Levine, Jacob, Braun. Have I missed anyone? Yates. That's 6.
All opposed?
Deering, Fisher, DePiro, Newton, Cullen, Henricks, 6. Have I missed anyone?
Any abstentions?
Judge McCarthy, I apologize. That was an up or down? In favor. 7-6. Motion does not carry.
Okay. Motion doesn't carry. We're losing time. We're going to lose some commissioners. Is there any other new and other business? That said, is there a motion to enter into executive session? Judge Braun, is there a second?
Fisher, second.
Commissioner Fisher, all in favor? Please raise your hands.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12. I have 12.
Any opposed?
I didn't get Commissioner Jacob, but he can let me know.
Okay.
Looks like he's in favor. Motion carries.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Please stand by. Mr. Chair, we're back in public session.
Great, thanks. General Counsel Stam, can you please report on what we did during executive session?
Sure. The commission discussed matters related to litigation. The commission commenced 2 substantial basis investigations. The commission authorized steps in several investigative matters, closed 1 matter, and discussed several other investigative matters.
Great, thank you. Judge Berlin, you wanted to?
Yes, one thing I skipped over for the sake of time. The Albany office has reopened on a hybrid schedule starting yesterday. We've divided folks into 2 groups so that we can maintain proper social distancing and observe necessary precautions. The New York office will be opening later this month on a similar basis. We're just waiting for the construction to be completed and the necessary wiring to be installed so that we can do that.
Great.
We're getting back.
Great, well, thank you. Is there a motion to conclude the meeting?
Fisher, so moved.
Weissman, second.
All in favor?
It's unanimous.
Unanimous? Great. Have a great day.
Letting some